clothes, give me love, and give me shelter. Simple life, it's all we want to live. Give me food, give me clothes, give me love, and give me shelter. Yeah.
So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the We2 Liberians Movement platform. Your distinct and dynamic platform that speaks to and for the masses. We are not in the business of manufacturing players, pimps, and hustlers, we say, but we're in the business of changing and revolutionizing the thought process of our people, not only in Liberia, but even around the world. So tonight is our We2 Liberians Movement monologue that's going to be hosted by your one and only Ayiti Williams. So from the soil of Mother Africa to the global diaspora, we rise on the shoulders of movements of visionaries. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who taught us the power of nonviolence. Rosa Parks, who sat down to stand up for dignity. John Lewis, who bled on bridges. Nelson Mandela and Steve Biko, who faced down apartheid with unshakable courage. Patrice Lumumba, whose words thundered for Congolese sovereignty. Also Jesse Jackson, who gave us moral direction. Now, we can also add Patrice Lumumba, who reminds us daily that dignity is not negotiable. On tonight's show, we are gathered here under the theme, why the growing number of protests in Liberia haven't translated to social and economic change, or we can better say, why Liberia's protests failed to create real change. Again, I'm your host, Ayiti Williams. Thank you for tuning in. I know this is actually one would say, because normally we're more, tuning into the issues that are trending. But for us, we want to actually dwell on issues, even if, a number of our viewers consider those issues issues that have passed. We consider them issues that are swept under the rug. And if we can kind of talk about them so as to give our viewers insight, educate them, as you all know, our platform is actually geared towards educating, cultivating, and empowering the socially and morally conscious youth. As we all know, Liberia approaches 178 years of independence. And I know a lot of us will be a little bit more concerned as to why we are not at this particular time pounding on that particular topic, especially when we are only a couple of days away from the July 26th independence. But that's something that we will be talking about here in a few days. And as I mentioned on a couple of our lives, that we are looking forward to having guest panelists who are of interest, to kind of talk about what Liberia has actually gained, being around for 178 years. But that's besides the point. Tonight, we just want to kind of take a deep dive into this protest, July 17 protest that's, for the most part, was held sometime last week. So again, if you've just tuned in, I am your host, as usual, Ayiti Williams. Thank you for tuning in tonight and taking this ride with me to take a deep dive into why Liberia's protest fails to create real change. We can also ask the question, or maybe not ask the question, but just add and say how we can find alternatives, ways to be more effective in our protest in Liberia. First, I would like to give the definition of what it means to kind of protest, or what's the definition of protest. For the very ordinary person in Liberia, particularly in the context of July 17th protests. Enough is enough. Protest actually what it means. So let's just say in the Liberian way, you know what I mean? I want to kind of say in a very colloquial Liberian English. Now we to talk, to show say we vex, say things not good. We hungry, no job, hospital, not working, justice, not fair. So we go outside, we shout, we walk, so the people in power can kind of hear us. So let's now go back into a more formal way of saying it. For many Liberians, protest actually is a public cry, a way to express frustration over daily hardship. For example, no food, high prices, no jobs, and things of that nature. Demand better services like healthcare, roads, schools. Show anger at corruption and things of that nature. I think that's pretty much a way to actually give our viewer a sense of what protest is all about. But what's more important here, because we want to kind of draw, not only the elite, but especially our ordinary people in the country, because I feel as though that a lot of times the disadvantaged are being used, in protest or during protest. And once those who orchestrate or will put together these protests, organize these protests, accomplish their aims and objectives, then the disadvantaged group are sold out. I mean, they're left to themselves because the fact that those who organize these protests now have gained their independence. But the real truth is, let's go back to 1979 up to other protests that have been held in the country. Have those protests gained any meaningful results? What have been the gains? To a large extent, there has been a lot of losses if we were to look back. But the point I'm trying to stress here, I hope we'll be able to take from tonight's episode or tonight's monologue some lessons, something that we can learn, and then we translate into action that will kind of help our people. So, and that's why I wanted to, for the most part, just talk about this tonight. So, let's do it this way. From the soil of motherland Africa to the global diaspora, like I said, we rise on the shoulder of movements like, movements held by Dr. King, and other civil rights leaders. And even were to take it from the great United States of America, where, ex-slaves were emancipated, and then not only that, but they were deprived of the rights. And there have been many protests in this country. But let's look at the legacy and the testimonies of protests without, purpose. Because the truth is, a lot of the protests in Liberia that have been held, they've been protests, without purpose. And the truth is, protest without purpose is to a large extent empty. And today in Liberia, the Enough is Enough protest led by Mulbah, I believe K. Morlu, understand and we, the people, carry the noise, the numbers and the momentum, but do they really carry clarity of vision? And I think that's one thing that's really affecting the country, because a lot of times we host these protests and we're not very clear on why we are protesting, what the protest is all about. Most time our protests are politically aligned, but it's not really geared towards a single goal and objective that's pointed towards the masses, so as to make some meaningful change or impact that will benefit the country at large. So the truth is, now let's go back to this July 17th protest. Are we really marching or protesting in the past for transformation? Or the question here is simply becoming background actors in someone else or else's political theater. Tonight podcast asks a hard question. Why haven't Liberia's many protests translated to real social and economic change? And that's something that I'd like to leave with you. So I broke the monologue here into segments. Our first segment will actually look at the context and the critique. So on July 17, as we know, 2025, which was just, if not a week ago, maybe days ago, thousands of individuals actually filled the streets under the stand banner. The demands were just economic justice, wage reform, healthcare overhaul, and judicial independence. And yet, many young people who marched seemed unsure of why, unsure of the next step, why to vote at, and where this actual protest is going. So why is this happening? Because in Liberia, protest too often becomes a vessel, a tool wielded not by communities, but actually by political actors. Like I mentioned earlier, alliances shift, leaders change, but what doesn't change? The fact that the youth remain the fuel powering personal ambition. And it's true, because a lot of times those who organize these protests have their own personal goal and objective as to why they launch these protests. And so that's actually a tragedy. Unlike the civil rights movement, for example, in the United States of America, which was anchored in a much deep ideological foundation, nonviolence, human dignity, constitutional equality, a movement often lacked the same compass. So it means that if we're to protest in Liberia, we're protesting in Liberia, I think should be anchored on a much bigger or full focus on something more ideological as opposed to political alliance. And that is, because I'm for CDC, I am just going to join this protest and just protest against UP. Or if I'm a UP supporter, I'm just going to follow suit, not because of what the agenda is all about, not because of the worldview or ideological frame or mindset. I'm just going to join this particular protest and protest because of my political alignment. So those are factors that we need to consider. So we must ask, what is the ideological anchor of enough? Is enough? That's a very, very critical and crucial question that we need to ask, because a lot of the kids or individuals that I saw in the street, that's why I wanted to break it down and make it real clear for our ordinary people who would protest the true meaning of what protest is. It's an objection to something that someone has said or something that someone is doing. So you're opposing to it and you're saying no to it. I started the show trying to give a definition, and in simple Liberian English, I wanted to make it clear because I want ordinary people to understand this, so that tomorrow, when someone comes and say, "Look, I'm trying to mobilize a group of people. Let's go ahead and protest." So you're going to be able to sit down and think about it, have a second thought, but not to just jump in, and follow suit only because, your mom is a part of this, or your dad, or your cousin, relative. But well, you will have to sit down and think about it. But the thing here is the same problem that we all always, pitch out here. We have a demographic or group of people that are not able to think for themselves. They're not able to make decisions for themselves. And I feel, in my opinion, it's because of those factors that we find our country, our people keep making the same mistakes over and over and over. And we need to really, really sit down, kind of try to educate our people so that they can make better choices. Because sometimes a lot of these protests, people will sustain injuries. Some of the protests result to fatality, meaning that people die and all that stuff. So we educate our people as to why it's important. Because I started the show, give an example of the great or late Dr. Martin Luther King. I use Rosa Parks as an example, who will be defiant. We consider that, civil disobedience, where she will refuse to stand up for some white person to sit in, because they know within herself that, look, I'm doing the right thing. Why would I, be asked to stand only because this person is white, or this person is this race and this and that? Because I know within myself that I'm doing the right thing, so I am not. So that's a great protest. Same with a guy like Nelson Mandela, who will be fighting against the apartheid system in South Africa, will say, regardless of anything, they will lock me up and I'll do the 27, because he did not do it only for himself. His objective was to ensure that blacks in South Africa are free. So it was not aligned to any political party, but it was more ideological, meaning that it was an idea, the thought process, thinking that, look, we all are human beings and we all deserve to have this right. Human dignity, constitutional equality, was actually the reason behind why, Nelson Mandela will fight, and that fight will, allow, or not, I wouldn't use the word allow, but this man would sit there and say, I would do 27 years in prison so that my people can be liberated. And that's something that a lot of us need to understand. But we'll go out there, not to sound redundant, to just, join in on this ride and this bandwagon. And because, we form part of, or, my mom or my dad is part of CDC or UP or Liberty Party. So I'm just going to join in and then just joining this protest without any ideological, reason, behind you making such decisions. And so we want to make sure that we clarify, and that's why, again, we started out giving the true definition of what it means, what protest is all about, what it means to protest. So if you have joined us, or you're just joining the platform, I ask that you begin to share the show. If you have some writing instrument, you have a device or something that you want to take some note, because it's so important. Even though the protest is over, but we are going to have more protests coming up. This is Liberia. This is what we do. We go out there, we demonstrate, we have all these protests. But why is it that the question now here is that, why is it that all of these protests, that we're pushing here and we're out in the street, all the protests. We do not see any social economic changes, and meaning that we've not seen lives improve. Whatever reason we're protesting for, ensure that our people have jobs, we have better health care, we have equality. We still we do not see changes in our country. Because the truth here is I don't think protests should just be anger. You know what I mean? It should be way beyond that. Because the truth is, protest without ideological reasoning or ideology becomes performance. It means that we just go out there, we just performing. And at the end of the day, these performances, you know, to a large extent, with faith, and then we'll have no result. And if, you know, our young people are not trained to see protest as a value, you understand? Value driven strategy. If they see it only as a moment for spectacle and they are not, you know, trained enough, they'll be risking their lives, you know, being used. And like I said, after they've been used, and the organizer or those who, you know, who put together these protests, once they gain prominence and they gain they accomplish their aims, you will be trashed. The bookman would say that you'll be discarded once political aims, you know, and objective are achieved. So we need a mindset shift from being foot soldiers to becoming strategic thinkers. And that's why we keep saying we want the mindset to be changed. We use the word revolutionize the thought process of our people. So after, for example, after the July 17 protest, July 17, July 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, today, on my end, it's the 24th, and I'm of strong conviction in Liberia, it's also the 24th. Has there been any change? Or do we see changes? Yes. They went up to the Capitol. They did their thing. I mean, it was a pretty good protest in terms of how the protest was conducted. I believe they stated their points, and they line up, why they went out to protest. But the real truth is, will they even accomplish what they went out to protest for? So again, without a mindset shift, not just going out there to walk, shout, stream, what's going to be happening here? We will not be able to achieve a more holistic, goal that will benefit the country, in terms of the masses. It's just going to be a few group of people because they will use you, they'll manipulate you, and once their aim and objective, their aim and objectives are accomplished, they trash you, whether they will discard you, and they won't need you. And then you will go back, you go back to the pit, you go back and start suffering, you'll be jobless. The job that you went out there to actually advocate for, you won't get it. The good health care that you say you want, good hospital, good wages, the job that you're looking for, you won't get anything. So let's change our mindset. Again, we say we need a mindset shift from being foot soldiers to becoming strategic thinkers. And that actually requires education, mentorship, and leadership accountability. And that's why for us, for our platform, we like to go back and use historical, empirical data to actually, and many that we go back to history. And in Liberia, we don't really have the history that we can go back to use as a reference to say, all right, people protested, and this is what the masses, the general masses in the country, the populace, the people in the country, the ordinary people in the country benefited from. So we want our people to know, want our people to be trained, want them to be educated. So we need mentors. And so that's why we want to create the picture that the kingdom will go, they will protest for sanitation worker. Today they would die. Rosa Park there. They say, you know what? We will sit on this bus. And yes, the changes we can see, blacks are riding buses with white, and they're sitting on it. We see what's going on in South Africa today. Though there's still not equity, but there has been. Nelson Mandela actually became the first Black president of the country, South Africa. And that was so that the Blacks in South Africa would gain prominence and we get equity. And it's happening because Africa is on the rise, and the Africans now are on the rise with the mindset. So in Liberia, we can follow that same pattern. Thinking like Dr. King, thinking like Rosa Parks, who refused to stand up for someone else, some kind of white person, to sit down. Meaningful. Steve Biko would do it. Or fight for his people. Black consciousness in South Africa. And so if you have tuned in, you're watching the We2 Movement Podcast. This is our monologue, our topic for tonight. Why is it that the many protests, or the rising number of protests in Liberia have not translated into social and economic change. After we protest, our people are still in the same condition that they're in. Their lives are not changed. Things are not changing. We stay far. So then what was the purpose? 1979, Rice Riot. We had a whole group of people rioting. People died. I mean, there was major disruption. So we need a more structural pattern of protest. You understand what I'm saying? But structural barriers also exist. Economic dependency, political cooptation, weak civic institution. These are the walls that are standing between protest and transformation. Again, let me give you these structural barriers that actually affecting our people. One, economic dependency. Our people are poor. I was listening to Dr. Umar. I don't want to divert, but if you think of it, a lot of the decisions our people are making, they're doing it because of poverty, because they're poor, they're not able to do for themselves. Hardship. So they rather get involved into these, protests, so that maybe at the end of the day, the organizers who are financially potent can give them something here and there that will sustain them for a few days. Two, political cooptation. Yeah, because of who we align ourselves with politically. Oh, you know what? I'm a seditious, or I'm for the UP party, I'm for Liberty Party. No, we should go beyond that. Because we're doing it for the right of our people. We saved, deserve the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Weak civic institutions. What lessons are civic institutions in Liberia? What are they teaching our people? They say nothing. Even our churches, they even form part of the weakest institutions in Liberia. We are not teaching our people. So these are the walls that are standing between the protest and transformation in Liberia. Now, across Africa, others have faced this and found path through. And it's possible. Look at how Pan-African movements like South Africa's United Democratic Front or Ghana's Early Independence Coalition built ideology alongside action. And we can take it a step further because we're talking about Liberia. In Liberia, we've seen this too. In the 1970s, Moja, the movement for justice in Africa, they didn't just protest. They raised political consciousness. They rooted their work in anti-colonial thought and Pan-African values. Today, youth performs like FLY and organizations like PACJA echo that spirit, but often without amplification or follow through. So the question is, how do we embed Pan-African values into today's protest culture? I want to read that question again or restate the question. How do we embed Pan-African values into this protest culture? So let us be built on that Pan-African pillar, our protest. Don't just go out there and protest because, for protest's sake, let me say it that way. It has to be built on that Pan-African human dignity. You know what I mean? To build our people, to build our country, and build ourselves as a nation, as a country, as a people, as a society. The answer actually lies in resembling that protest. Is not the goal. Transformation is. Because if we have all these protests and we are not achieving our goals and objectives for the protest, then what's the point? Because at the end of the day, after we protest, there should be some kind of result. There should be some kind of transformation. Because the truth is, you protest. Protest is like, force. If we're to define force is actually movement with a force time distance. So in order to have actual work done, you must be able to apply some kind of force and you must be able to see some kind of movement. But if we go ahead and we protest, we do not see any transformation. Things remain the same. Then what was the point of the protest? So let's move to our next segment here, or jaywalk to our next segment. It talks about Pan-African framework and lessons. So as I mentioned earlier in my opening statement, when Rosa Parks actually refused to give up her seat, she didn't just spark a protest. She sparked a value revolution, a movement that said, we are worth dignity. Have you ever thought about yourself? You're worth dignity. You are not just someone's get boy. You are not just someone's office boy. You are a Liberian, there to make a difference. So you go out there and you protest all day. Why is it that all of these protests, with all the protests, we've not seen any social economic change in the country? Our people are still living in the condition that they're in. Nelson Mandela didn't just fight apartheid. He reframed that fight as part of the continental liberation. Marcus Garvey, they only want return to Africa. He actually imagined a Black world, unified, self-reliant, and proud. So I'm trying to actually create a picture so that you can see. But then it has to do with the quality of people that we are using for these protests. Because the fact that they're not able to think for themselves, they are not able to decipher for themselves, it makes it even difficult. So we have these mass movement, but the quality of people that's supporting the movement they're not even there for the true purpose, and objective to see meaningful change in the country. So now the question, what does ideological clarity look like for Liberian youth today? And so that's why a movement like the We2 movement, we continue to pound this. Sadly, I was talking to a friend of mine or an associate of mine. I mean, it's like a younger brother to me from Minnesota. I'm not even going to call his name. He would say to me, Ayiti, I watch the show sometime, and I say to myself, Ayiti, I don't know why Ayiti is wasting his time. No, I'm not. Because I'm sowing a seed. I'm planting. There's no way I can plant these seeds that I'm planting, educating these people, because I believe one day, and it's not too far, our kids, our people will rise up now with some level of ideological clarity. And because now we are teaching our people, we're educating our people. And so sooner or later, they will grab the torch. If a 37-year-old man who's much younger than that, several years ago will rise to prominence through military coup, and is now shifting the contour and the political landscape of Burkina Faso today, the land of the upright. And that's why our people need to move from the horizontal and then move to the vertical to be upright. And so if we can now shift and reframe the minds of our people, then that vision, that protest that we have, that which we want, seeing that there's a roadblock, and if we have an objection with a clear mind, we have a clear picture, ideological clarity, meaning that the thought process to say this is exactly what we want, and we see this, and we want this to be corrected. So that's something that we need to instill into our young people. And so if you're watching or you're just tuning, you're watching the We2 Liberians Movement Podcast or a platform, tonight is our monologue, podcast. Our title for tonight is Why Is It That the Growing Number of Protests in Liberia, those protests that we consistently have do not translate into social and economic change. Protest is not just demanding better wages, clinics, or courts. It's actually framing those demands in values, dignity, fairness, democracy, Pan-African solidarity. It's understanding why these rights matter. Do you understand why you're protesting? Are you really protesting because you want to see change, or maybe because after the protest you get paid? Because you want to be seen by someone so that they can help you out? And so it goes back to poverty. If we're to empower our people, both economically, give them quality education, and create an ideological framework that will give them the ideological clarity so that but because of the pre-ideological and presupposition, meaning that what someone has already told them, they're stuck in the box. You're going out there to protest. Think about it. What do you get from the protest? Are you really protesting to see change for your people and for yourself, for the general masses, the general good of the country? We want to know. It's understanding why these rights actually matter. Yes, you want better wages. You want good health care, good clinics. You want better infrastructure. But there are proper ways in which we can channel it. Channel it really for the masses, not for just my, personal, selfish goal and objective, so that I can be seen, so that I can gain prominence. You know what I mean? But here's the key. We must teach that nuance. We must teach the strategy. We must teach the lesson. All lessons must be taught. History, strategy, nonviolence, Pan-African thought. All of these should be taught, not just in school, but in youth-led workshops, in diaspora hosted seminars, in students' unions. Those are places that we should teach our young people, both in the diaspora and in Africa. Imagine a national youth civic camp, a space where protest becomes more of a curriculum, where protests become preparation, so that when these things happen, and we know exactly what we're going to do. Not to another slogan, but to policy wins, education reform, job training, access to credit, new enterprises. If we end the protest where it started, on the street, then what did we actually build? What did we build? So the protest ended right there at the Capitol, and then we go back, we say thank you for those of you who actually came and protested with us. Are we teaching the kids in school why they protest? Are we teaching the ones that are in the ghetto, in West Point, in Douala? For example, in the US, Rosa Parks' action was followed by community organizing, boycotts, lawsuits, and legislation. The question now is, what will be the Liberian equivalent of that symbolic act? Imagine you organizing participatory budgeting forums where communities decide how their own tax dollars are spent. Isn't that important? How the money, our tax dollar, where we spending it, who's spending it, who are they spending it on, or why are they spending it? But no involvement. The very people who you're using to go and protest, once that protest is done, hopefully one of you get elected, or a few of you get elected, your political party gets elected, and that's it. Legal aid clinics, student parliaments, community planning circles, all of these make protests real. So we already know. We just hear that, you know what? There's going to be this protest. We're mobilizing 10,000 men, and one would say my protests were it was more powerful than yours. Is this the kind of country we want? I mean, it goes back to the very foundation of the country. A country that's been around this long. Do you know what it means to be a Liberian? Do you know what it means to own a Liberian citizenship? To be on that soil, the land of liberty, the land of the free? And now to divert, that takes me back now to what it means to be a Liberian. Why is it that the growing number of protests in Liberia it's not translating or has not translated into economic and social change or social and economic change? But our people still go back to the same condition. In 1831, preacher prophet not Turner would stand up to strike a blow for freedom, not only for himself, He wanted it for people. That was a protest. Let's reclaim protest. Not as a shout, but as a strategy. Again, we cannot claim protest as a shout, not to just go out there and shout. But I see it as a strategy to really make change or changes. It's important. So let's pivot to segment 3, a roadmap for youth upliftment. Now let's shift a little bit, or kind of jaywalk, from critique to actual construction. What's the roadmap is the question. Yes, one version. Civic and ideological education hubs. Safe spaces where you study the histories of Mandela. I think that's very important. Lumumba, that is the Patrice Lumumba of Congo. Marcus Garvey, he led many protests, spoke to his people, educated his people. So a platform like the We2 Movement that is here is grounded on educating, cultivating, and empowering the people. It's coming up. Let's teach values. Let's teach our people vision so that they can be able to see beyond, to set their sights higher, not to settle for less. We are more than conquerors. Why are we settling for less? To go out there in the street, and shout with no results? 2, I want to talk about this. Youth assemblies and popular councils. After every protest, let youth draft policy belief on wages, clinics, schools, and present them to local officials. Structured and strategic. Technical, vocational education training and vocational training, so important. Every protest should be linked to some kind of pathway to skills. Because the very people that we tag along to protest, what skills after the protest? We're not even advocating for these people to give them some kind of skills, to make them professional carpenters, to make them professional masons, professional iron workers, professional steel benders. We dash the very people. We throw them away. We discard them. Those people could be plumbers. We could get them into agriculture. We could get them into coding, graphic design. Economic independence is political power. It's so important to empower people economically. And once our people are free financially, economically, crime will reduce. I don't want to divert. I want us to stay here. But, it's so important for us to do that. Youth Civic Service Program, a national program where youth volunteer in schools, clinics, farms. Serve your community. Learn your country. Bridge the gap between the people and the state. We can also establish Pan-African solidarity networks. Connect with youth across the continent. We're talking about the United States of Africa. What are we doing with our youth? We put them out in the streets. And they yell. Look at Ghana. Look at Kenya. Look at South Africa. the Caribbean. We can tie them all together to be able so that they can share tools, strategies, and solidarities. It's so important. Another thing we can do here is transparent leadership protocols, you can call it. Leaders must have charters. We'll call it charters, where we'll be able to declare our goals, share our budgets, limit our terms. No more showed away or shot away. You may call it mobilizers. We can't continue to use our people. We cannot do that. If our youth assembly or the youth assemblies drafted charters, community plans, budgets, proposal, it will shift the protest from demand to negotiation. Yeah, when we go to protest, we can go out there and be able to have dialogues where we can meet at the common ground. The government will be forced to engage ideas, not just chants. We go out there and we just chant. We engage ourselves into slogans that don't even benefit us. So imagine if every young person in these protests was also building schools, teaching the kids, starting businesses. You'll see the capacity would grow. The authority would grow. I think it'll be harder for the organizers of those protests to manipulate them. And even if they were to protest now, the protest would no longer be drama. It will be democracy in action. Let me try to conclude here. So if you're tuning, you're watching the We2 Liberian Movement Podcast. Monologue tonight. A monologue is focused on the July 17th protests spearheaded by Mulbah, I believe, King Morlu. It's important. What are we doing to our people? What are we doing to ourselves? And these people are supposed to be the future leaders. So let me leave you with the conclusion here. Not only a conclusion, but also a challenge. So I want to leave you with this. Protests actually mean something. It must be rooted in ideology, in strategy, in community, in dignity. Our Liberian youth are not pawns. You are heirs to a mighty legacy. I always say that. You hail from a lineage and legacy of incredibly great men and women who walk the face of this earth. I was listening to a podcast today. Nigeria was actually named by a colonial writer. Niger area. She blended the two. Prior to Nigeria, that part of Africa being named Niger area that's now Nigeria, they built empires. They were great people. I always go back to say, our people built the University of Timbuktu in the city of Sankore. We built the University of Guinea in Ghana. The first university in Spain, the University of Salamanca, we built it. So we're great people. We must teach our children those things so that they can know themselves. know who they are. Again, you're heirs to a mighty legacy, a Pan-African inheritance that once shook the entire world, the globe. So we must honor it. Our young people, our youth, attend workshops. Write your demand as policy. Connect with your peers across Africa. Don't waste your time just on the internet doing nothing. Time is something that you cannot replenish. Why waste your time? Go out there you in the name of protest, and you're gaining nothing meaningful. Yes, your peers are in Kenya. They're doing extremely well. They're in Rwanda excelling. Now Burkina Faso is on the way. Niger is on the way. Mali is on the way. Ghana is doing pretty good. People, even in Nigeria, South Africa is doing good. Liberia deserves better. Always said, it's a subset of Africa. Liberia is not poor. They're talking about IMF, World Bank, it's building schools, this and that. We have our resources. We don't need World Bank. We don't need IMF. If we can tap into our own resources, we won't be beggars. We wouldn't even have to protest. It is the mindset. Walk around with better mindset. And that's why we're on the receiving end. I don't want to divert. Connect with your peers across Africa and the diaspora. Volunteer. Build. Let protest be the spark, but never the end. It should never be the end. I'd like to do a final reflection. Rosa Parks didn't stand for a boss seat. She stood for dignity because she believed in herself. Nelson Mandela didn't just oppose apartheid. He envisioned healing. Marcus Garvey didn't just dream of return. He imagined Black liberation. Liberia is enough. It's enough. Must become more than a slogan. It must be the start of a youth-led transformation. One that does not end in the streets, but begins in our souls and souls. Let's rise for purpose, for dignity, and for a liberated Liberia. Let this be our Pan-African awakening. And so if you're tuning tonight, this is how we can conclude and close the curtain tonight. I've been your host, Ayiti Williams. This is the We2 Movement Podcast. Platform monologue. The platform that speaks to and for the masses. We say we're not in the business of manufacturing players, pimps, and hustlers, but rather we're in the business of changing and revolutionizing the thought process of our people, not only in Liberia, but even around the world. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. This is our We2 Movement Monologue Podcast tonight. Our title for tonight, why is it that the growing number of protests in Liberia does not translate into social and economic change? I've been nothing but your host, Ayiti Williams. This is again the We2 Movement Podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. You be blessed and have a good night. I look forward to talking to you. In the next few days, if not tomorrow, day after tomorrow, we'll be talking about Liberia at 178. Pan-African sovereignty, call to action. I hope that we will have a number of viewers just tune in because we will be talking about this. And I hope that you can come join in, give us your perspective. Liberia is 178 years in a few days. What do we have to show for? What it means to be a Liberian, what it means to own Liberia, Liberian citizenship. It's really going to be an exciting show. Thank you very much for tuning in. I've been your host, Ayiti Williams. You be blessed and have a good night. Bye.
want to live. Give me food, give me clothes, give me love, and give me shelter, shelter.